Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Seth Ferranti. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up? What's up, Stax? How you doing, man? Thanks
I'm
for
doing
having me
good.
on.
Yeah, no problem. You've been making waves lately.
Yeah, sometimes stuff goes good, sometimes stuff goes bad. You just got to keep rolling, right?
Yeah, we done an interview before. You told me your story. We didn't talk about how you faked your own death and all that. Forgot to get into
No,
that part.
no.
But you got into filmmaking. Can you tell me how you got into filmmaking, and then we'll get into what's been going on lately?
Yeah, well, I started writing in prison. I wrote like 8 gangster books in prison. I've started writing for magazines like Vice, Don Diva, Feds. I was doing mostly prison gangs, like urban drug lords, mafia guys. A lot of dudes I was locked up with them too. I was locked up with their homies or co-defendants. So, I was doing that because that's all I could do in prison. All you could do is write. But my my whole objective was I wanted to tell these stories, and the best medium to tell these stories is film because that has the biggest impact. You could, reach the most people. It's the most accessible. So I always had this idea as I'm in there writing these articles for Vice, Don Diva Feds, then I'm doing my books for Gorilla Convict, Supreme Team, and I'm like, man, I want to tell these stories visually. So so like before even going out the door, like 5, 10 years, I'm already got a writing career in prison. So I'm like formulating all this in my mind. I'm like manifesting it. And then, the closer I get, I start reading more stuff, books. I was ordering books like The Idiot's Guide, to cameras or films or documentaries, and I was reading a lot of type of that stuff. And just any book I could get, I was trying to get my base of knowledge. I was even looking at like shots. They got books that have pictures of different shots and how to set up and stuff like that. So I was really getting into it. I put a lot of effort. So then when I got out, it's not like I jumped right into doing film stuff. I was still doing articles. I was still putting out books. I was doing events, Comic Cons and different stuff like that. It was like 2015, 2016. And then, I've been writing about the White Boy Rick case a lot, like on Vice News and a bunch of other websites. And I had this one piece on this website called The Fix It. I actually wrote in 2012 that when I was in, it kind of went viral. So me and this other guy, Scott Bernstein, we were kind of known as like the dudes carrying the torch for White Boy Rick. And I hooked up with this filmmaker, Sean Reck, Transition Studios. I interviewed him for his first documentary. Sean Reck is a guy, he did like 200 Crime Stopper shows for all the networks, and he did his first feature doc. And he won like 8 regional Emmys in Ohio. So I interviewed him about A Murder in the Park for Vice. And then, we made a connection, because I told him my story and we kind of started talking. And he was actually needed something else. He was looking for another documentary and he had heard about the White Boy Rick movie. And, I introduced him to my work. And I'm like, yeah, we can do a doc on this. And that's how I kind of got my feet in the game. I gave him access to all that story. I had access to Rick and a lot of other people like Scott Bernstein, who had access to a lot of people. And we came and we joined teams with Sean and we made that film, So that was kind of like my um I don't know, mentorship, school, university, but you can't pay for the kind of education that I got from Sean Reck and making that white boy over like that, 18-month period.
That was
So
like
that, yeah.
your first like really taste of the documentary world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I done some short films when I got out, that I put on YouTube, but this was like professional. This dude was a professional, man. He's won Emmys, and he kind of took me under his wing and trained me, in the documentary game. I knew how to tell a story. I just didn't know all the, I didn't know the cameras. You can read about cameras, but I learn real good when I'm there and I do something. Some people read. I'll read and make a plan, but then when you can get that hands-on training,
Yeah.
that he gave me. Yeah, and Sean Reck was really cool. He would even do like he would interview people and he would sit in the director's chair. And then, he would give me 5 minutes like in the chair, asking the questions, at the end and they would still be recording. So, he really put a lot of effort and trained me into not only writing for film and producing film, but directing.
That's what you're most known for, is the White Boy Rick documentary, right?
Yeah. That's the biggest thing I've done to date.
And then
You
that
know,
opened doors for a whole bunch of other things.
yeah. So I got Nightlife out, which is a film. I worked on that film like 5 years. Basically, my first film. It didn't come out first, but that was my first film that I was kind of running all by myself. That's about a group of violence interrupters in St. Louis, Missouri. There's this guy, the Reverend Kim McCoy. We actually followed him around for like 2 years and took footage. He walks the streets on the north side, which is like the worst area in St. Louis. And but he doesn't walk during the day. He walks at night.
Yeah.
So he'll be out there like 11 to 2. So we would go out there and follow him with like cameras. It's crazy. One of my cameramen was like an ex-military dude, and I don't know if his camera worked. It was okay, but I had better cameraman. But I particularly picked him because like he was licensed to carry, and he knew how to use it. So like he had a 9. Like on every shoot. I mean, we didn't tell nobody, but we had it just in case because I
Yeah.
mean, stuff can
You
get
need
crazy
it.
out there. Yeah, but
Sometimes you need that.
The Rev had a good handle on everything. He never got us in those situations. So Nightlife was actually the first one. It took me about 5 years, self-funded. I got a little money from one of my lawyer friends and stuff, but pretty much self-funded. Took a long time to make. And I had some other ideas. Like I had the idea for Dope Man. I had the idea for Psychic Revolution. I had the idea for some of the other stuff I'm working on now, but I didn't have any money, to do it professionally. And Nightlife, I was working mostly like college students and stuff like that. And my buddy, who was an ex-military dude, but we still got some beautiful shots. But so the end of the pandemic, White Boy goes on Netflix, and it's like top 10 on the whole site for like 2 weeks. I don't know if it got number one, but it got high. It was like 3, 4, not just for documentaries, for like everything. Like it was like on the top 10 masthead. I think we kind of got the Tiger King effect. Like remember that show Tiger King blew up in the
Yeah.
pandemic because so this was at the end of the pandemic, so everybody was still home. But yeah, it kind of went crazy, bro. Like it
Did
went
you think it
crazy.
was going to have the success it did?
No, I knew it was a good film, but actually it was the delayed success because the first 18 months it was out, it was on Stars, right? And it
Yeah.
really didn't make any noise on Stars. And then it was off Stars for a year, and then Netflix picked it up. And then it
Boom.
went on. Yeah, it went on at the end of the pandemic, and then yeah, because Netflix is just a bigger platform. I mean, Stars, all those other platforms are nice, but for the streaming, Netflix is the biggest. YouTube is probably the second biggest.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it went on there. So I don't think Stars, they didn't have a big enough audience, or they didn't promote it right, or they didn't market it right. I don't know, or the timing wasn't right. So it was kind of delayed success because it was on Stars for 18 months and it really didn't make a lot of noise. But yeah, so it went on Netflix, and it's still on Netflix. They keep renewing it, the license. And once that happened, you know, it enabled me, to reach out to like investors for some of these other ideas, and I started getting stuff funded. Like I got Dope Men funded, America's First Drug Cartel. So that was my second film that I did with Christian Cipollini. It's actually
Where's that one streaming?
it's on Amazon, and it's on well, you gotta buy it. It's like a TVOD or AVOD, so you can get it on Amazon. You can rent it, and then you can get it on Tubi. You can watch it with ads on Tubi. So that's
Yeah.
what I did with Christian Cipollini. That idea kind of came from him. He wrote it, but I put the whole film thing together, and he's also the star of it too, Christian. But yeah, that goes all back into prohibition. Lucky Luciano. Harry Anslinger. You know, Rothstein, Jack Lake's Diamond. It goes into all these 20 gangsters and kind of shows how before Prohibition even ended, these gangsters were already, starting the first drug cartel. Because everybody talks about like Mexican cartels, Colombian cartels, but I mean, the Italians had the first drug cartel.
Yeah, the heroin was flooding the
yeah,
streets.
based
It
out
was
of New
like,
York City. Yeah,
yeah,
based out of New York City before Prohibition even ended. So, that's not talked about. A lot of that's lost in history. So that's what Dope Man shows, that story. But it also shows how Harry Anslinger started the Bureau, Harry Anslinger, who was a failed prohibition agent, started the Bureau of Narcotics, and he became like the head drug cop, the predecessor to the DEA. And it shows how like racism and criminalizing drug use and all that started then, before the end of prohibition. So it's weird, you got this kind of timeline. It all goes with prohibitions when the mobsters are making a lot of money, and the government's trying to restrict access to us, and the alcohol thing doesn't work. So then they immediately switched to all these other substances, be it cannabis or whatever, and
yeah.
made a war on that. So Dope Man kind of shows that 100-year parallel. That's just the first episode. I got more episodes of that planned too.
And then
So
you were gonna do one about Ryan Leone before he passed away, right?
yeah, that one's up too. That one's on that's on Amazon, and it's on Tubi too. So that's the A Tortured Mind, the realities of post incarceration syndrome. So Ryan had been making a film, trying to get a documentary about himself for like several years, because we've been talking about it. I was doing all the stuff, because he got out a little bit before me. He was trying to get something going. He had about 3 or 4 different filmmakers, that he was talking to, and they were recording a lot of footage, doing interviews and stuff like that. And then, and I seen some cuts and stuff like that. But his was like, he was called like the savage, idiot savant, the savage life of Ryan Leone. And it was more supposed to be almost like a success story, like someone goes through the grinder, prison, drug addiction, mental illness, then comes out of the other end, has a family, becomes a successful writer in Hollywood. And
Yeah,
Ryan too. A lot of people talk a lot of shit about Ryan, but I mean that dude was in Hollywood, bro. He was going to the parties. He was hanging out with Johnny Depp, Nick Stahl's his boy. Nick Stahl was like in the Terminator movies and
yeah,
a lot of other stuff. I mean, he was going to all those parties, bro. So I mean, he was right there in the mix. I know because he used to call me, send me pictures or whatever. But when he passed, his dad, because he knew we were friends, and he knew my films, and he knew my work. And I think at that time I'd come out, I had, White Boy, Dope Men, I think even Psychedelic Revolution had come out that time, in Nightlife. And or they were almost coming out. And he came to me and he's like, look, man, we got all this, his estate has all this footage. Can you finish this film? And they had like different cuts, and I was basically like, I don't know if I can finish that film, because I mean that film didn't really happen. I mean, he passed. That it wasn't the right ending. So I said, but I'd rather do a film that kind of looks, from a different angle, from the angle of the post incarceration syndrome, how people get out of prison and the authorities just give them like $200 and a bus ticket. I mean, you could have been in shoe for like 5 years, like
yeah,
lockdown 24 hours a day or whatever. And they just give you, you could have had all types of traumatic experience, drug addiction, who knows, homosexual rape. I don't know. I mean, it runs the gamut. All types of stuff goes on in there. So, each individual bears their own cross. But, they don't give no counseling, no, after conditioning, no, like stuff you can go to after treatment. I don't know what you want to call it. Like they don't give nothing. They don't do nothing. So that's what I wanted to show, how as a society, in A Tortured Mind, I do it through Ryan's story, but what I'm showing is how as a society, we put people in prison, with mental issues, drug addictions or whatever. And then, because drug use is criminalized, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
since drug use is criminalized, drug use is not seen as a medical problem, it's criminalized.
And
So,
you were locked
you get
up.
prison.
You were locked up for nonviolent drug offenses, right?
Yeah, for 21 years, cannabis and LSD. But I wanted to show with the tortured mind that, somebody has to do something, because you can't take these people. Dude, they go in there fucked up. They go in there, they witness the violence, you know, the degradation from the guards, getting treated less than human. I mean, you know what that shit's like. Like, we're not even fucking people.
Right.
Dogs, you know, pets get treated better, you know, and then you got to witness the violence and just, you know, the degradation, man. It's like the cesspool of fucking life. And then you get no type of counseling, nothing. You're already fucked up in the head. And, you know, dudes like Ryan, they just come out worse. You know, I think we all get fucked up. I think everybody, you know, that's done any type of little bit in prison, you got some type of PTSD. Some of us just hide it better.